Delighted to say that I'm joined by Ronan O'Gara and Alan Quinlan. Good morning, lads.
Hi, Aisling. How are you?
Good now.
Morning, Aisling.
How's it going? Have you been following Cheltenham at all?
Probably has, not me.
What about you, Ronan? Did you throw on any bets, or would you follow when it's on?
I used, but it's hard over here now because I have the Irish TV channels, but the afternoons are quite busy. But when I go home, I enjoy watching the racing review. That's for sure. I was listening to your discussion with Tommy, and in fairness, you were making Gaelic football sound interesting as well as Cheltenham, because I watched a bit of Dublin Tyrone at the weekend, and that was a dog of a match, but interesting nonetheless. Cheltenham, there was. I agree with all of them. The Flooring Porter ride, poor old Gallopin, the Champ, is it, that fell at the last when he was clear.
That's it.
And then 30 minutes later, he goes out, and Paul Townend, he goes out and wins. That's good composure from a top sportsman. Obviously, Rachel Blackmore's a massive fan of Jessica's in our house. My daughter is into horses, so I think that week or those 4 days, it holds a very special place in Irish people's hearts. And but in terms of backing them and stuff, no, I gave that up long ago, thankfully.
Yeah, save your money, you're better off. Absolutely. And as we move on to the Six Nations then, exciting weekend ahead. Just to talk about Twickenham last weekend as well. It was unbelievable scenes there. I was there. It was my first time in Twickenham, and just the noise was something else really to experience. For you, Ronan, when it was 15 all, were you nervous for Ireland at that point?
I was, actually, because kind of England had the energy at that stage, and it was a game that obviously with the disallowed Caelan Doris try, it could have been a very, very different game, I think, and Ireland could have gone on to win by maybe 30 or 40, but that's what people, I suppose, when they're in the heat of battle, they misunderstand the fact that when a team gets energy, it's hard to get it, and momentum, it's hard to get it back from it. But for Ireland to, I suppose, realise, okay, we're actually now in a dogfight, we need to probably change plan, and they only changed plan with probably 7 minutes to go to just be a little bit more direct, be a little bit more brutal in the carry. And they hurt England by doing that, and to score, I suppose, 2 unanswered late tries was put a different reflection on the scoreboard. But that's what happens at the top level. You're talking about tiny margins, even with red cards. So Ireland finished very strongly, which will give them a lot of confidence. But I think from reviewing the video, they'd have looked at maybe a lot of inaccuracies in their own game and forcing offloads, and probably being in a hurry to score, as opposed to maybe if they didn't knock on the ball 5 or 6 phases later, I think they would have got a lot more reward.
Yeah, I don't think by any means it was their best performance, but I think, Quinny, the way they showed that composure to really push on and get over the line, like we heard Johnny Sexton say after the game that, 2 years ago they mightn't have done that, they mightn't have been able to win that game.
Yeah, that was impressive. I think it certainly was nervy, Aisling. And the great thing from an Irish point of view is when they probably reviewed the match on Monday, there was a certain amount of mistakes and errors. I think 17 turnovers, too many in a game. And I think the way they were trying to play and the confidence they had in trying to offload the ball, keep the ball alive, it shows their mentality at the moment. But they didn't panic, and to get a record win and a bonus point win against England in Twickenham was absolutely fantastic. And I think it's a learning curve for this team going forward. Everybody automatically thought when Charlie Ewells was off that's it, Ireland is going to have it comfortable here. One thing they probably need to learn to do is when they have the man advantage is how do they optimise their performance and be really ruthless and probably hold on to the ball. The easiest thing, and Ronan will tell you this as a coach and as a player as well, if you're defending a team with extra numbers, and it's happened lots of us with sin bins in games, they're the type of games that you want the opposition to kind of the team with the numerical advantage to force things and hope that they turn the ball over after 2 or 3 phases. The hardest part for a rugby player defending is when you get into multi-phase, 10, 15, 20 phases even. So Ireland never really got to that big number. They always kind of turned it over or made a mistake. So credit to England. But I was kind of baffled that, and it just goes to show where England are at the moment, that they're kind of cheering a performance against Ireland, a bonus point
It's
loss
strange.
against Ireland because of desire and passion and stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy. But look, I suppose Eddie Jones is under a lot of pressure, and it's a complete contrast to where Andy Farrell was probably over a year ago. That turning point was last year against England in the Aviva, and Ireland are easy to watch now. They're playing confidently, and they are making some mistakes. They're certainly not the finished article, and they still have some issues, but I think they're in a decent place. But you move on to Scotland this weekend, and this is a real test of how good this team is now. Every week is a test, and just what they'll mentally be like, and will they be able to find a route to streak this Saturday against Scotland.
Yeah, and it's about, I suppose, taking those learnings and putting them into action, and I suppose growing each game. And this, as I mentioned at the start there, Ronan, the crowd and the noise in Twickenham was something else, and it was the same in the Stade de France game, and I think it might have affected Ireland a little bit in that game. Maybe they lacked a little bit of leadership as well with Johnny not in there, but I think in Twickenham they overcame that, and that was unbelievable. Is that a factor, say, for you when you're out playing? Like, was that a factor, the noise, the crowd? Is it something that you have to sort of block out?
That's something you love to as well, I think. The more you probably seasoned professional you become, you kind of, I think, you realise in your head that, performing at Lansdowne Road or the Aviva is very good, but I think the true test of character is when you go away from home, when you go to the Millennium Stadium, you go to Stade de France, you go to Twickenham, you go to Eden Park. These are places that you want to be tested physically and mentally. So I think what you say is that's what experience is, because for you, I'd say you were blown away by Twickenham because it's a real impressive stadium where, you know, I mean, unfortunately in the Aviva you have 3/4 of a stadium. You don't have the back end where it isn't complete. You go to Twickenham and you're kind of engulfed by and taken over by this great kind of emporium of just a huge great stand in front of you. And I think you know, I mean, there was obviously a good Irish support there, but the majority of the people there were English, and everyone was probably, from an English point of view, rattled with the early sending off. But yeah, I think to reply to your question, you know, Ireland will be looking to improve against Scotland and to put together probably an 80-minute performance, with the asterisk that they got a bonus point victory in Twickenham, which is probably a contradiction in certain terms. But the way I suppose the team have been going under fire, between mixing the kind of a ruck game and an offload game, they'll be looking to put all that together, because I think they have some very good forwards playing on top of their game. You look at, you know, Robbie Henshaw can't force his way into the team, so that's a reflection of where the strength and depth in Irish rugby is at the minute.
Yeah, big time, and I think that's something that we can use to our advantage. The bench every game is really having a strong impact. And Alan, as we move on then to Ireland versus Scotland, it's the first time in 18 years that Ireland have a chance to win a Triple Crown at home. It'll just be unbelievable to do it at home in front of the home fans.
Yeah, it will. It's certainly a great opportunity to finish the Six Nations on a very positive note. We'll obviously be very disappointed if England don't beat France, which is highly is probably the wrong word, but it's pretty unlikely. It looks like France will win a Grand Slam. You'd never know, but for Ireland, winning 4 out of 5 of the games in the Six Nations, I think is a pretty good return. They will be disappointed, but when the years you have France and England away, it's always really difficult. 4 years ago, we won a Grand Slam in this situation, but France are at a different level at the moment, and we ran them very close in Paris. The physicality obviously was an issue, and some of the breakdown issues. So the team is still learning, I think, and they're not in a perfect position, but they must finish on a high against Scotland. If you're in the Scotland camp, Aisling, and Roger played against them so many times as well, they'll be really, really determined to try and fix their Six Nations. I think they started off brilliantly against England, great home win. Then they went to Cardiff, were very disappointing. Got walloped by France and were very average at times against Italy last week. So people keep saying before every Six Nations, this is the best Scotland team ever, and they're very, very dangerous. They're going to do this, that and the other. They have some very good players, there's no doubt about that, but they're very inconsistent. So they'll be fighting for their lives in Dublin tomorrow, and they're not going to make it easy for Ireland. So Ireland have to be very, very careful here that they don't take their eye off the ball and they just expect that it's a home game, the crowd are going to get behind them, and that they're going to win it. I think they have to improve a lot. The scrum was a big issue last week, and those knock-ons and turnovers. So it'll be really interesting to see what they're like. I think every game is a mental test as well, and you know, we're trying to build towards a World Cup, but obviously win at the same time. That's the perfect scenario. But they've got to be really good tomorrow and really aggressive and physical, because Scotland will certainly throw the kitchen sink at them. Blair Kinghorn is playing at 10. That was the big eye-opener with Finn Russell. Roger probably have a stronger opinion on the fly half position than me, but Finn Russell has been poor in this tournament so far, made a lot of mistakes, and Gregor Townsend didn't want to get into that gesture. So that's a big call to see how that works out. Kinghorn is obviously a running fly half, and he's shown that in the last few weeks against Connacht and Munster as well. So it'll be a really interesting one, but Ireland have got to make sure that they don't underestimate Scotland in any way. Yeah,
big time. I don't think you can ever think that Scotland are going to come out and not put up a big performance. Ronan, can I bring you back to 2010 if you don't mind? It was something that came up in the press conference during the week, and we were just chatting about it when Scotland played Ireland in Croke Park and they got over the line. I think it was 2023 that day. It was the first win in Ireland for over 10 years. Can you bring me back to that day and what it was like for you?
I saw Johnny commenting on it during the week, and I have no recollection. I can remember Dan Parks kicked a conversion from the touchline, so I knew it was a good day for Scotland.
What he's trying to say there, Aisling, it wasn't his fault that Scotland won that game.
No, Ronan, you kicked to go 17-all, didn't you? And you kicked to go 20-all, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
You did.
I remember it was Croke Park, but I was fascinated to get into it. But I never Googled the article after the comments by Johnny. You know, I remember the game. I can remember where I was standing. I think at the end of the game. But you mean that what a big disappointment that was. But yeah, following up on I think earlier in the week, was it Andy Nicholl was on the show commenting about the Scottish team, and interestingly, he's a smart guy. He was commenting about the regression that the Scotland team have made from a mental point of view, and that's quite interesting, because if Van der Merwe wasn't suspended, they could have 5 potential test Lions playing at the weekend. But you know, I suppose what's interesting for Irish supporters' point of view is the strength of having centrally contracted players. So for people to understand what the union controlling their players looks like is exactly what's happened Finn Russell in the Six Nations campaign. So between games, he goes back to France to play for his club in Racing. So Sunday night before the France-Scotland game, it was Scotland-France. Scotland were at home. At 9 o'clock on the Sunday night, Finn Russell was taken out for Racing against Bordeaux. He finishes at midnight. in Bordeaux, and he's got to get up on a plane from Bordeaux to Paris with his teammates. He gets home at 3 a.m. But what does he do? Does he go back to his apartment for 4 hours to fly at 7 a.m. to Edinburgh to join up with his international colleagues who have a weekend of, recovery, hot and cold baths and, physio, Pilates, whatever, recovery to the ninth degree. And then, he's suffering, and I think he obviously has had his ups and downs with Gregor Townsend, but people have short memories in the fact he gave the Lions a chance to win that third test. He was exceptionally good that day, and now all of a sudden he finds himself, not starting. So that's, if ever there was a concrete example of what looking after your players or keeping control of your players looks like, this is it in a blue jersey. But it's exactly the same for, a Johnny Sexton or a Tyke Furlong or an Ian Henderson. So, that's what I suppose it looks like. I'm looking forward to the game in Paris on Saturday night. I think the French are ready to put on a show. I think they've prepped for this game for a long, long time. They know exactly who their impact replacements are, and I expect them to win with a bonus point.
And how could England get over them? Is there any area that you think that they could exploit to be able to beat France? That's what we want to happen here.
Yeah, you can, exactly, because I just think that there's a lot of people, whatever, throwing pies at Eddie Jones, but he masterminded that performance against the All Blacks. I was in that stadium in Japan and, for that semi-final, and it was a complete exhibition of total rugby when England destroyed New Zealand. Yes, the players are different. I think he doesn't have the backs this time to implement what he would like to do. There are too many, I suppose, inexperienced, unproven people in white jerseys playing in the back line. 50% of the game is defence, so French will put Aldred, they'll put Villiers, they'll put Figu, they'll put Dante down at Marcus Smith. They'll tire him out by that way by having him to make tackles, so he can't kind of orchestrate the English attack, which he's very, very good at. But I think from living here, you just get a sense that this is the big step that they really, I suppose, need to tick off on their way to making a charge at a home World Cup.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for them, for sure. I think everybody thinks the France are going to do it easy enough, but you never know, I suppose, what can happen. And Alan, just the changes then for Ireland in the starting team. We've seen that Ian Henderson is for James Ryan. We knew that. Mac Hansen comes back in. It's Andrew Conway who has a knee injury. Jack Conan comes in for Peter O'Mahony at 8 as well. We've seen him come off the bench at the last 2 games. What did you make of the starting team?
No major surprises. I think obviously Peter O'Mahony will be disappointed, but given where Jack Conan has been in the last 12 to 18 months and his performances and the impact off the bench last week, he's a different type of player than Peter. Ball in hand, particularly in the wider channels, he's brilliant, and he got a great try last week. So it kind of indicates that, Peter, with respect, is incredible in the line-out and breakdown, but Jack Conan is probably a better carrier. So it's back to that back row that was so good in November. And it's kind of horses for courses, and that's the competitive nature of this back row. Peter O'Mahony would be vital coming off the bench and being part of the group as well. Henderson coming back in, that's a no-brainer. I think he probably would have been disappointed with a couple of penalties last week, and has kind of had no consistent run of matches. So he's a really important player. Andrew Conway, unfortunately, has picked up a knee injury, but we now have a fair bit of depth in that back three. And Mac Hansen, obviously, the way he started in the first 2 games in the tournament was brilliant, and he offers a real kind of ability to come in off the wing like James Lowe and attack as well and be a playmaker. So they're in a good place. I think I think the scrum situation is obviously that's been clarified, and Ireland didn't do a Rassie Erasmus on it last week and go public with all the scrum penalties, but certainly there was, it's slowly dripping out now that some of the decisions were wrong from Matthew Reynal, and I think that's coming out of the review, and that's the feedback Ireland have got back themselves. So it's a dangerous proposition, but this team will be kind of ruthlessly judged if they don't get a performance tomorrow. And I think that not alone have they to win this game, but I think they have to find a performance to finish on a high and really kind of excite people and have optimism about the team going forward. So it's not going to be easy, but the ideal scenario would be a really good performance and attacking rugby in really good conditions tomorrow in Dublin. But the most important game of the weekend, I'd say, is La Rochelle are away to Toulon at 4:15 tomorrow. So we'll have to put some eyes on that as well and press the record button to see how the boss gets on there.
Yes, Ronan, how are you going to fare out?
Big game, chance to go third. We're in sixth at the minute. It's very, very tight. It's been a crazy top 14 campaign this season. But everything to play for. The season gets going on the next 3 months, so I can't wait for it. We got a crucial game tomorrow, and then Six Nations is over. Europe is back on. Top 14 goes on, so it's time to get going.
It's a tough schedule to actually be able to balance. Like, I spoke with Leo Cullen a few times about this, just how you manage to balance the whole thing with Six Nations happening as well.
But it's an opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, great opportunity.
You want to see players, and you want to give people game time, and you want to set up as many of them as you can to succeed. So, like, there's always two ways of looking at it. You can find the faults and the negatives and the difficulties with it, but turn it on its head and say, okay, these guys are getting an opportunity, and it's up to them to take it, but you're trying to make sure that they are prepped well to take it.
Yeah, definitely, big time. And so I'll get a few predictions before I let you go. How do you think it's going to go at the weekend? We might do both games, France and England, and the Ireland-Scotland game. Alan, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I think look, Ireland will be mindful of the things I was talking about there, and will win. I'd be disappointed if they don't win comfortably. I think Scottish people who probably will pick up on this and will be listening to see what the Irish pundits are saying. But as I said, Scotland have been pretty inconsistent. So look, I think Ireland will finish on a high, and it'll be great to win if they do win a Triple Crown. That's really important. Anything less than a good performance, I think it'll be disappointing. And Rog probably knows more about the mood in France. I kind of thought France were poor against Wales last week. They were ruthless against Scotland and Murrayfield, but I just think there's too much momentum with them now, and I think they'll probably save their best performance for the last game. Maybe they'll be a bit nervy. Some of them haven't been in this kind of pressurized situation before, where the silverware on the line. But I think, unfortunately, from an Irish point of view, I think France will possibly be too strong. But England have the forwards probably up front to cause them some issues. So if France revert to just kicking the leather off the ball like they've done at times, and then kind of struck with their X-factor players and their power players, they could be in trouble. They've got to play a bit tomorrow night against England. And look, they've been the best team in the tournament so far, and they're going to be a real threat in 18 months. So it'll be, I think, Ireland and France for me.
Yeah, I think our England are getting better and better with each game, so I hope that's the case again this weekend. And Ronan, what do you think?
Ireland will win with 4 tries and France will win with 4 tries, I think.
Straight to the point, good stuff, what we like. Brilliant, lads. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for joining me.
Cheers, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It's 8:35 a.m. at the moment. We've got a packed show still to come on OTBAM, but up next we're going to be talking GAA.